I want to help you master the Sewing Advisor on the Husqvarna Viking Designer Brilliance 80 sewing machine. So first off, when you turn the machine on, you are guided to kind of the opening screen. And right at the top here, you see Select Fabric. So if you don't know what you're working on and you just want to know what the default fabric should be, it should be woven medium. That's going to be the nice setting for everything that I'm about ready to explain. But if you were to have a lighter weight fabric, like a silk or something light, heavy fabric, denim, upholstery fabric, canvases, pick the fabric that you want. Not only can we pick the fabric, but we'll next be able to pick the technique from these orange boxes that we'll be doing on that fabric, and then it's going to pick the right stitch. It's not only going to pick the right stitch, it's also going to set that stitch up for the right stitch length, stitch width, and the pressure of the foot. I can't emphasize that enough. This machine can be told what fabric it's working on and know if the foot needs to come down heavy or gentle so it doesn't come out wavy. It is smart. It has a sensor in the presser foot that does all that for us. So let me show you a couple things of how this would look. So first off, if I'm on woven medium and I want to do a seam, it's going to go into, it'll also pop up this great little tutorial, but if you don't want to see this, just minimize this down to the bottom here. Let's take a look at the stitch length. On a woven medium fabric, a 2.5 stitch length is ideal. Trust me, I know that's the length that I use most of the time. But I can go back in, and by the way, I can touch the Sewing Advisor here, or I can touch the little swatch of fabric here. So if I touch it in the left corner, I get back to where I was. Let's choose a woven heavy fabric and back to that seam. Look at the stitch length. It has lengthened it to 3. So it knows that if I have a thicker group of fabric to go through, it needs a longer stitch length. Otherwise, those stitches get so tiny. Have you ever stitched on like a minky or a fleece and then it's so hard to take out because those stitches are so small? Then tell the machine that you're working on something heavier. So speaking of something stretchy, like fleece, you have also stretch light, stretch medium, and stretch heavy. So depending on these stitches, if we pick a seam, look, it's different. That stitch has now been selected, that is the stretch stitch, and to sew those together for that particular fabric. Let's stay on that fabric and go back though, and let's look. We have overcast options. That stitch is going to be different than if I had selected a woven fabric. It even recommends a stretch needle right here and the right foot. So there's more than just what the stitch is. These settings are all the way across the board. We have seaming and overcasting. So those stitches are going to be different, and it also shows us how we're going to guide our foot along this fabric. We can also go into, we have basting options, blind hem, let me scroll up, blind hem, a regular hem, buttonholes. You know this machine has so many buttonholes in it that's hard to know which one to pick. But if you tell the machine your fabric choice, it will actually tell you which buttonhole to use. On this one, a stretch heavy buttonhole, it's actually recommending a manual buttonhole foot, and the red little cord in there is a recommendation for cording it. So that also shows us in this little video that will come up at the end how to position and place for a corded buttonhole. Now, if my letters look bigger than yours do on your machine, I've touched the A+ icon at the top here. So that way I can read it a little easier myself. So you just need to scroll up as you look at that, or you can enlarge all this information and it will fill up the entire screen for what you're working on, and keep going until you get to the end. So I'm going to minimize that. So different fabrics in the Sewing Advisor. Look at this. There's even one for vinyl and leather. And what's going to happen when you sew on vinyl? Let's just talk about a seam. It is going to come up, and let's see here. Let's put this back down to the bottom and then minimize it. It is recommending that we use the non-stick foot. H that comes with this machine, that's the part that won't stick on the vinyl like a metal foot would. See how great this machine is? It highlights what you need and then also lengthens out that stitch length so you don't perforate your vinyl and it cuts all those holes in it. So longer stitch length, the right foot for a seam as you go. So I highly recommend that you get used to using your sewing advisor. If you haven't used it in a while, just return it back to woven medium. It will remember the last fabric that you were on, and so when you do a start new, everything's about normal, including the pressure of the foot.